Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I am very, very excited and honored to be introducing a very special space champion, Miss Beth Mund. Miss Mund is an analog astronaut, former NASA spokesperson, keynote speaker, podcast host, and author. Miss Mund has worked with many astronauts at NASA, wrote scientific speeches, and has been on incredibly exciting analog missions. Interacting with many astronauts, Miss Mund is a strong believer that we all can become astronauts. And she shares all of these incredible insights through her keynote speeches and her podcast titled The Casual Space Podcast. And she has guided many workshops along this topic. I met Miss Mund at the 2022 Humans to Mars Summit in Washington, D.C., and was blown away by her passion for aerospace. We even have an episode of us together on her Casual Space podcast, so you should definitely check that out. I'm incredibly excited and honored to talk to her today about what excited her about aerospace, how she got into this industry, and specifically what intrigued her into going into becoming an analog astronaut and communications in the industry. So welcome, Miss Mund. Thank you so much for taking your time to inspire the next generation.
Hello, Gitika. It's so good to see you again. I love talking with you.
Yeah, I'm so excited to, just kind of dive deeper into your journey and kind of learn about where your passion developed because you have so much of it and I could see it in the conference. So I'm so excited. And, I have to start off with the question of how your typical day looks like because I'm sure there isn't a typical day, but I'm curious how your day usually runs. Could you start
Oh,
off by telling me?
great. What a great opening question. I love that. Oh, my goodness. Well, it depends if the kids are in school or out on a break or in camp. That kind of dictates my day, truly. So I have two great kids. And in the Midwest, there's so much to do, and we cherish our summers. So I have to say, it's hard to get work focus done when we have beautiful summers and really lush green grass and the trees are in full bloom. And it's hard to stay focused. So if they're home, we're usually having fun. And this morning, like I put them to work, we try to find the balance of like chores and fun. So they did washing windows this morning, pulling weeds with mom, and picking up all the trimmings from the lawn. Yeah, you got to balance it, right? So, and then we all kind of go into our respective rooms in the house and I go to work. And I know you're asking a question about work and in this industry. So I'm a story seeker, designer, and deliverer. And I take the stories and I share them on the platform that you mentioned, Casual Space. So my day usually consists of either enhancing stories that are already out there, and that can be anything from writing them. A lot of times I'm finding them and I'm seeking them. So that can be reading, like reading books by authors in our industry. It can be seeking on internet through LinkedIn and all the platforms. It can be seeking them through projects. I also sit on a couple of boards. So through my board connections in this industry, I am just so eager to work with, I work with people on boards, but I don't know their story. How did they come to the board? They have a whole background in the industry, just like you and I are bringing. And I'm eager to find that. And then I work to deliver it. Can I deliver it for you as a service, part of my business? Can I deliver it on a podcast for others to hear and get inspired by? Or can I put it into my online and on stage program so that lots of people or organizations or companies or audiences can hear that story? And I want to stress that 99% of the time, the story's never my own. So I'm happy to share today, but as a conduit, my work day consists of, like I said, finding those stories, developing them, and then delivering them. And sometimes that's speech writing, sometimes it's a LinkedIn article, sometimes it's helping a client deliver their story themselves with speech communication advice and advising and coaching. So my day usually never ends at 5. Who does anymore?
Yeah.
But I love, it's hard for me to turn off at night because that's my time zone. I'm a night owl. Are you a morning person, Gitika? I think you are.
Yes, I am.
Yes, I knew it. I knew it. So that's good. We need that balance because when you're getting winded down, I'm going to work. And I taught communication at the college for many, many years at night, which was such a joy. And so I've just conditioned myself to really like have my best work hours at night. So if you ask me what my night looks like, it would be like I would produce all kinds of activities for you
Wow.
and impress you. But my day, I'm not going to lie, I struggle. Like by 10 a.m., I'm ready to kind of start working. You've already accomplished the day and I'm just waking up, getting up, but that's okay, especially in the summer, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear though that you're able to really balance your life and your schedule with your family and the work that you're doing. And especially, I have to commend you on your podcast. I remember, I think it was probably a little less than a year ago, I opened an Instagram for Ignited Thinkers and I found your podcast and I absolutely just fell in love with your energy and your voice is so special, I think, because so
Oh,
many people
thank you.
can connect with it. And I love the energy that you bring. And I think, that's why I really connected with your podcast at the beginning. And so I'm really glad and honored to really have you on mine. So yeah, thank you for sharing your typical day. And, I have to ask, what was the inspiration behind founding Casual Space? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but could you expand on it?
Oh, and Gitika, you're such a good host. I'm so excited to be here with you too, because you and I connected as it's so easy to do with you. But I think our journeys are so similar. And part of this journey is the story of my podcast. So as I worked at NASA and had my career, people just like with you, they want to come share the journey with you. They're excited for
Yeah.
you. They're genuinely wanting to be an assistant, an advocate, an ambassador for you on your journey because they see that you're doing great things with your foundational work and your non-for-profit. And so they want to help you, but they don't know how. And so people would come and share these NASA stories because I would find that I would be delivering, what NASA did this year in the annual report, or I would be delivering a new technology through tech transfer that a lot of people had never heard of. And sometimes, honestly, most of the time, I would be helping to clarify a lot of myths about space or exploration or, what we're doing in space and on station. And so it was my pleasure and my joy to deliver these stories. And then they, in return, wanted to share theirs. And there was no place for that. I thought, oh my gosh, what do you mean your uncle helped deliver and pick out of the ocean the capsule when it landed from the moon and recover it on a naval ship? That was your uncle's job. And someone somewhere felt connected enough and inspired to share that gentle, wonderful, inspirational story. And I'm sitting with this story like a beautiful diamond, and it just sits with me and that
Yeah.
family of
Mhm.
experience. And I'm like, where can this go? There's so many people who space touches them and inspires them. And I wanted to put that somewhere in the world. And I'll never forget, I was at a work conference, and they were all saying, you got to write a book. If you want to get your word
I
out
was
there
just
and
thinking that.
right. And they were, so many book coaches and opportunities. And I was thinking, that's not my style. I'm not a book. I mean, I could, and I would do
Yeah.
anything if that enhances delivering people's stories and using it to get out there. But I have struggled, Gitika. I have written like 5 books and they all live on my laptop. They haven't been produced. But the idea of the podcast at the time, I said to all my colleagues, I'm going to do a podcast. And they're like, oh, they really were concerned for me. They're like, I'm not sure that's a good idea. And I'm like, it is for me. And I just took it and I said, I'm going to invite those stories and put it out into the universe and see what happens. And I have to tell you, it is not hard to find these beautiful inspirational stories. I just sit tight. In the beginning, I had to obviously invite and do the work. But now everyone has a space story or an idea or an innovation. And now there's so many companies and startups and students. And I don't have enough time to put them all on the podcast, which is a glorious challenge.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you are capturing all of these stories on your podcast as well, because every time I look at someone's like LinkedIn profile, for example, or their resume, I see that they're so accomplished and so far in the industry. And we tend to make assumptions about an individual like, oh, they must be like a rocket scientist. They must be incredibly intelligent, which they definitely are. And we might think that it came easy to them, unlike for
Right.
us. But really, when you hear their stories, you're surprised how much it relates to your own life or how they had to overcome even more obstacles than what you're going through. And I think that can serve as such a deep inspiration for so many young students, as well as adults who might feel like, oh, I'm too old to do change my job or change my career. And you hear all these stories about people changing careers like mid-age, and they're very, very successful. It can serve as such an inspiration. So I'm
Right.
so glad you're able to capture these stories.
And they're everywhere. And they're everywhere. I wish I could get them all. I wish I could put them in a time capsule and send them back out into the universe and everyone gets to share a piece. And they inspire me. I mean, your story inspires me, and your journey is going to evolve and flow. And it's going to be such a joy to be your ambassador and serve you in that way. And then when you come back and share your story, it's going to be unique to you, but so many people are going to be able to relate to parts of that. Maybe it was a struggle or something, an obstacle you had to overcome, or a career path, or a mentor, or a teacher. It doesn't matter. But the more we share it, the more people can see themselves in the journey of space exploration. And that's my mission is I want everyone, as you mentioned, to be an astronaut. And it doesn't mean you have to go to space. It means if you want to have an exploratory mindset and you want to go see things in the world that impress you or you're curious about, you have every right, just like everyone and anyone else, whatever your education level, your curiosity is your right to be an astronaut in your own way, whatever that means for you. So, yeah. And your journey is going to be so great to watch. I'm just so glad you came and introduced yourself. Well, I got to see you on stage. And then I was like, I literally was running, as you know, back and forth. It was a very busy conference. And I stopped at the top of the auditorium and I sat down. And I just had to hear every word you said because it's also the way in which you said it. And your passion is evident too. So it's nice to connect with another female in this industry whose passion drives a lot of what we do, and the work is hard. So it's good we have that, right?
Definitely. Thank you so much for your words and your kind words. And you kind of answered my next question for you, which is, well, how do you believe that everybody could become an astronaut? Which seems
Ah,
like such a, big, like, oh, every single person astronaut. But I think the way you redefined the word astronaut really answered my question. But, could you answer that a little bit further, maybe? Of
yes,
what is
yes.
your belief of why do you think every single person can be an astronaut?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's so many people who are coaching this in such beautiful ways. Again, I always stand on the shoulders of giants like Loretta Hidalgo Whitesides is a coach that helps. She delivers a book and a program called the New Right Stuff. And I took her course, and she gets you mentally prepared for becoming an astronaut. And what that means is you want to present your best self when you go into space or you go on a new endeavor, whatever that is. You want to show up healthy, ready, and, kind of in your best self, whatever that means to you. So it kind of means you got to work on yourself. And I love taking that course of hers. I take it a little step further in saying, all right, yes, work on yourself, but there are some obstacles in your path that you think are just never going to be able to get around or through. And for some, like I mentioned, there's education, there's being equitable, diverse. Dr. Cyan Proctor talks a lot about a Jedi mindset in space, in the industry of space exploration, and what does that look like. And so I want to make sure that when on your journey to becoming an astronaut, I have tips and I have ideas and I have suggestions because I've seen the astronauts and I've worked with them at NASA, and I know what it takes to walk that very straight line. But that's one line. Now there's many lines, right? And everyone has their own. And now more than ever before, it used to be, as you know, it used to be in my days at NASA, this is how you enter the astronaut corps. And I met these wonderful, talented people who were exactly what NASA needed. And good, because we did need people who were highly educated, risk comfort. It's always you had to be comfortable, you had to work with risk every day, you had to be a good teammate, you had to be knowledgeable, there's so many, right? There's so many qualities and characteristics, and NASA defined them very efficiently. But now we need all kinds of folks that are going to be those first, and they're not necessarily going to be hands-on scientists. They might be welders in space. They might be dietitians in space. We have folks that are going to have to be growing our aquaponics in space. And so, or
Exactly.
whatever that looks like, whatever system that will keep us, well fed and nurtured. So those those astronaut paths are completely unique and different. And we don't know yet what some of these obstacles are. We don't even know. So, how do we reverse engineer thinking ahead to those obstacles and decide how we can be our own astronaut? So, some of it is training and getting through your own mindset and your own healthy mind place, meaning, are you healthy? Like, are you contributing your best self, whatever that means for you? Did you take care of old things that were haunting you, or did you have any mental concerns that, if you're not getting enough in one area of your life and you have to evolve into that and make sure you're getting enough in your relationships, in your work challenges, whatever that means. So I just take it a little bit further and say, okay, and let's go through and look at what are the obstacles, what are some of the things we can plan on, and what are some tried and true things that all astronauts have to overcome and experience that we can put into our daily lives, not in the future for where we want to be, but right now, today. So I work with organizations and people who just want to know, well, what does it take to be, if the astronaut is our highest level of achievement, right? And we aspire to be the word astronaut, whatever that means. For me, I'm an astronaut mom. I want to be the best mom I can. That is hard. It is hard. Even for a dog mom, I'm a dog mom too. And just today I had to like take the dog out and walk her in the electric fence around the yard. And it takes diligent training every day. And then they get it, but you still have to be diligent about the training. And she's just a puppy. She's super cute. But I want to be the best, and she needs that for her safety and for the safety of our neighborhood. And I appreciate a well-trained dog. So I have to make sure I'm doing it each and every day. Little things, little tiny investments that make us better dogs, better people, better moms, better everything, better humans, so that when we explore, we are bringing our best selves into that space.
I think that's very beautiful. That's tied in so many different aspects to the word astronaut, which I think can mean a lot more than what it was in the past. Like you were mentioning, there's this lady, you might have heard of her, Dr. Mindy Howard, and she has
Oh,
this whole
yeah.
inner space training,
Oh,
thing where she
yeah.
does,
There
where
it
she
is.
trains exactly like commercial astronauts to really like maximize the overview effect, and with the work that she's doing with like inner peace and like mindset, which I think is everything, but also combining and looking out. And as we're looking into commercial space stations and the number of accessibility points for regular civilians to go to space with different backgrounds and conduct R&D research, I think it can be like just a whole new realm of potentials and possibilities. And I'm so excited to see how artists can utilize that space, not only artists, but scientists, engineers, maybe even politicians. You never know. There could be so many different ways to use this new space. And I'm very
Yes.
excited.
Yes. I love Dr. Mindy. She's phenomenal. You and I should take her course because I would get a lot out of that, I think.
Definitely. I'm really looking forward to like taking that course myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I was mentioning in your introduction that you're an analog astronaut, and I've noticed that you've been on incredibly really cool missions on Earth conducting research, and you've been in an isolated environment, of course, with a few crewmates. So, could you share, from these missions and experiences, what is your most memorable experience as an analog astronaut?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. There's two because I've been on two analogs. And I can't wait to go on more. And I'm getting you to join. I
Yes.
cannot wait.
I hope,
Uh,
yes.
yes, we need your passion and inspiration and knowledge and everything you're about to bring. So I'm gonna figure this out. We're gonna do it together here because I'd
Thank
love to
you.
have you as a crewmate. Being an analog astronaut requires you to do two things, and this is what for me was my. You asked me what was my favorite part. One, you have to step outside of your comfort zone. And
That's
that's
true.
hard. I like being comfortable in my house, surrounded by my family, my clean laundry, a working bathroom.
Yes.
They're comfortable things in my life. And I'm
Of
not going to
course.
lie. Like, who doesn't love camping? Glamping is nice too. I wouldn't know yet. I haven't done that. But so, one of the biggest joys and one of the most memorable experiences for me was saying yes, first of all, and being accepted to go on the mission and being like, can I be this far outside of my comfort zone and still be a valuable asset to the team and not be so uncomfortable that I'm, not going to be able to function? Make sure I'm, focused and contributing and helping. And so I had this moment halfway through and I was like, I'm here. I'm doing it. I'm surviving. And a lot is asked of you on these analogs. There's lots of
I'm sure.
research. Sometimes there's experiments that the previous crew has put in place
Oh,
and you have to continue. And that's a lot of pressure. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't
definitely.
want to mess this up because 6 previous crews have kept this going. And I want to make sure, you don't want to let anyone down. And so you are very focused. And then there's lots of team camaraderie because everyone brings something they want to achieve to the mission. And you look around at your peers and your colleagues and you say, okay, what is your experiment or task? How can I help you? And now that's yours times 5 others. So that right there, now you're very busy. So you have previous experiments, everyone's experiments, and then your own, whatever you're bringing, and what's also expected of you on the mission. Maybe you're going on a mission, like you mentioned, in Poland. I was there for isolation study. In high seas in Hawaii, you're there as a Mars simulation. It could also be Moon, but it's so Mars like. The terrain is almost spooky that it looks exactly like Mars. So you have to do a lot of physical work. And then you get to go into these lava tubes where we believe, like on Mars, just like in Hawaii, the lava tubes contain extremophiles where life grows underneath this surface that has very little exposure to sun and air and water, and of course there's air, but it's protective of radiation down there. And we it's hard to believe that things can grow and flourish in these
Yeah.
extreme environments. So on these analogs, the two things I enjoyed the most, obviously the people, my crew. I still lifelong friends with some of the folks I got to work
Yeah.
with, like Dr. Cyan Proctor and the folks I got to meet. But that moment where you're in it and you've done a week, maybe you have a few weeks ahead or a few days, and you're like, oh my goodness, I've accomplished this much. I'm exhausted, but I'm in the groove. I'm in the zone. I know what needs to be done of me. Now I can take that and have a renewed sense of energy. I'm cut off from my family. I'm missing everything of my comforts, and I'm still doing it, and I'm okay, and I'm contributing. And you find that mark. And I tell everyone, like, an analog will, everyone hits that wall, whatever it is, everyone, whether it's you're missing your family, whether it's the uncomfort of a bed, maybe you're not literate in, for me, I certainly wasn't literate in aquaponics and how to grow and take care of plants that were being submersed in water. So there was a lot to learn. There's a learning curve. Everyone hits a wall of some sort of a comfort or challenge. And when you work through it and when you get on the other side, oh, the joy, the experience, it's what keeps me coming back for more because I don't think I can do it. I'm like, can I do
Yeah.
that? It sounds intense and I'm intimidated. And then I go and do it and I'm impressed. And I'm sorry, but sometimes no college class, no job, like nothing
Yeah.
project I can do here at my desk, right in the Midwest, will give me that. Yes, I have to work hard, and so do you. And you're about to step into this incredible college experience, but nothing gives you that challenge where you're
Exactly.
like, can I really do this and overcome this? Because there's a team of others expecting that of me, and I don't want to let them down. And the research and the science and okay, and you dig in deep, you do it, and you're like, oh my God, I did
I
it.
just
Let's do it again.
yeah. Yeah, that sounds so amazing. I can literally see the joy and excitement on your face when you're talking about these missions and the experience. I was hearing, a scientist I was talking to was saying how he's researching a way to develop a artificial intelligence robot or bot that could be sent to space to do conflict resolutions or to help astronauts in an isolated period of time to feel happier or better or have someone to, kind of rely on to relieve their
Mm,
stress. And I thought that was really cool. And I didn't understand the value of it until I started hearing these stories from real astronauts, or even during the pandemic, kind of the isolation feeling of being by yourself. Luckily, I had my family, but it might not be the case for everyone, especially, physicians like nurses. They were all, isolated by
yes.
themselves. And I think just kind of knowing that you're by yourself, and if you're an astronaut, you don't have good food all the time. A lot of it is it protect,
So true.
so you don't get, and one person was saying that he's met someone who fought over like orange juice on a mission before because they can only have one bottle a day. And I don't know, it's just crazy to hear how these stories, they might sound so silly because we have access to unlimited orange juice, but on some of these missions, it could be the biggest thing and could cause a whole uprising. So I think just hearing those experiences and how we overcome those small, challenges we may have, and also to get out of your comfort zone and don't be afraid to learn new things and to try new things. Because, like you said, on these missions, I'm sure you learned so much. In my NASA internship, I learned so much in 4 weeks that I bet I couldn't learn over a whole entire
Oh,
year in like an
yes.
AP bio class or like a technology class. Like,
Good.
never. So I think, these hands on experiences are just amazing.
For us, it wasn't orange juice, it was papaya. It was dried papaya, and I'm not gonna say her name, but Amanda knows because I tease her all the time that she ate them all, and we were like, "Oh, Amanda,
How
you
did you
ate
eat
them
all of them?
all." She knows I
Those
tease her
small
all the
things.
time.
I know it's those small things that we take for granted
Yes.
on these missions.
Yes. Yes, so true.
Yeah, and getting into your experience in the aerospace industry and how you've done so much already. I'm curious of what sparked your passion for aerospace and how you kind of worked your way into the aerospace industry from a unconventional background and also like a different. You can tell us a little bit about your educational. I've read about it, but I'd love for you to share of what sparked your interest and kind of that journey of where you are today.
Oh, thank you. Space camp. It's top of mind, especially right now because we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of Space Camp. I can't believe it. So I got the privilege to go down there, and I do sit on the Space Camp Alumni Board where I help to financially support and in any way I can support the ongoing program that has
Wow.
inspired literally millions of students and kids all over the globe, and I just got that privilege when I was very young. I always knew I wanted to go. So I already had a space interest. I just didn't know there was a place in which I can apply that interest. And once I found it, oh my word, did I harass my parents to go? When can I go? Right. And I had to ask my teachers and et cetera, et cetera. Then I went. Life changing, as any space camper will tell you, most will tell you. And I came back home and I said, I've got to find something that is in this industry somehow. And it was a wonderful, beautiful journey because I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher and I'm not a hard scientist, but I'm a journalist and I'm a great communicator. And I had to find my niche and my love for space somehow within my skill set. So, in doing that, when I went to college, when I wrote papers, when I wanted to go to work, I'm like, how is what I'm good at going to fit into this industry that may or may not need it? And I just had to find those opportunities. But it all started at Space Camp, and I did go back to be a Space Camp team leader, and then I went back. And then I went back to be on the board, and I will continue as
Wow.
long as possible to support it because I believe that it's such a safe, beautiful place where every kid comes in with different backgrounds, different educations, all levels, all ages. And for that moment when they're there together doing their mission, they transcend all those boundaries we talked about earlier that we can all be astronauts, and they are the astronauts and they know it, and they get this confidence, and they take that, and it's just giving me goosebumps talking about it. And they take that back to their schools and back to their families and parents. And they become like the kid that checks in at space camp day one is not the kid that leaves. And it's because they constantly are accomplishing these incredible missions and they're being asked to do incredible things. And it's just this place where that it allows and encourages them to do so. And then of course you get how many astronauts now? I think there's 5 women and maybe 4, maybe more men that have become astronauts through
Amazing.
by going, starting at space camp. And I'll never forget the day I was walking down the halls of Johnson Space Center, just walking down the hall at work where I worked, and there was a space camp fellow camper. And I was like, oh, I recognize you. And we both of us had this moment. We're both females too. And here we are living our dream, starting at space
Amazing.
camp, but now walking the halls of the Johnson Space Center at NASA. And I don't remember if we hugged each other. It was like this awkward, like, I'm so happy. I'm so excited to see you. But we had to like exchange names again. And where do you work? And where do I work? And holy cow. And obviously, we've stayed in touch, and I'm super proud of her. I think she's still there. But that moment in the hallway was like this moment like, we started here, and look where it's brought us on separate, completely separate journeys. But I think for me, Space Camp gave me that open door invitation to say, you can do this. You've got to find your own way of how you're going to get there, but you can.
Yeah, that's incredibly inspiring. I think there's always like, whether it be a teacher, a club, a program, or space camp in this case, that really can inspire or change a student's life. And I had a similar experience, but at NASA, it was a NASA Goddard Center. It was a 1 week
Oh,
program. So I understand like some of these programs, they provide you with the confidence to believe in yourself and it kind of put yourself in that situation like, oh yeah, I can become an astronaut, or oh yeah, I can work in the aerospace industry. And I think moments like that are just incredibly inspiring and powerful for students. And to know that you're now kind of giving back to the community and it's, helping other students get the opportunity to be a part of this incredible experience you had is amazing. And, Space Camp, I've heard a lot of stories about how you get this hands-on experience with such a safe space to explore. And I think that's exactly what students need. So, and one of the things that I really wanted to highlight in your story that I was kind of hearing is when you mentioned after space camp, you found your passion for communications and journalism. And a lot of students that I know, especially in high school, when they view an aerospace career, they think of STEM, or hardcore physics or hardcore mathematics, or like a rocket scientist. And there are definitely people like that in the aerospace industry that we need. But I think a lot of times the other careers are hidden or something that are not well known of. So I'm really glad that there's individuals like you who are communicating how aerospace is like a whole little world. Literally any career, any passion can be combined with space. And I'm sure there's a career. So I'm really glad you brought up that specific point.
yeah. Well, and you did the work too. I mean, no one came and just showed up at your house and said, here's an opportunity for an internship at NASA Goddard. I'm sure you had to find it. I'm sure you had to apply. I'm sure you had to do the work. And so that this is possible. And it doesn't have to be, I love what you said about the STEM. Did you happen to hear I'm sorry, Corp, talk shortly after your program that day? Did you?
Yes, yes, it
Okay.
is.
So you've got please have her on because she's gonna blow your listeners away too. She's so incredible. She said something very wonderful about
I've had
STEM.
her.
And do you remember what she said? She's like,
No, I had her on the show and I've actually like
oh,
talked with her multiple. She's actually on my board of directors. She's so cool. I love her.
oh yes. Right. Yes, she's so cool.
Amazing.
So she often says, and yeah, I'm so glad. I can't wait to listen to that show. She often says that she has a problem with STEM, like in the women in STEM label, because it's limiting to say we're encouraging these people that go into science, engineering, mathematics and technology only, or STEAM with the arts. And there's so much more than that. And I know what she's saying. I know what she's saying, and she says it so eloquently that STEM is a pathway and it's getting a lot of attention and it's getting a lot of focus. But let's not forget, I mean, I got to NASA as so many did on a liberal arts degree, and I am a master communicator. And I did my master's as a journalist, I studied science journalism as part of my master's. Don't think I didn't study every NASA opportunity I could and, space paper and space topic. But I really do want to say that there's so many, you have to know who you are and what you're good at. And that's, I think, when we talk about the astronauts and the opportunities they have, I can tell you from working at NASA that there's so many astronauts that will train for years, literally years, and they get into the astronaut corps and then they train, and their moment of flight is maybe a 3% of their entire career. So any astronaut will tell you, I'm pretty sure, I wish someday I hope I can say this too, and you too, as astronauts, right? But they'll tell you, do what you love, because that moment in space for you is going to be just a fraction of a percentage of your work, and you'll enjoy it and you'll have this incredible experience. But the rest of that time is you doing the work, and that work should be something you really love. And I fell in love with communication, and I just wanted to continue finding, telling, developing, reporting stories. So I felt like I had already put myself in the right place. And it was, like I said earlier, finding that NASA connection and opportunity, which is a whole nother story. But I feel like that, when Christina talks about STEM, she's saying, let's not just contain it to STEM. And let's remember that there's a million women and girls and students that come into this industry not through STEM. And let's celebrate them as well and recognize them. And we can call it whatever we want, but I think STEM is getting such a focus right now, as it should, and women definitely need to, be in recognized in their efforts, and classes need to be more equitable and have, women teachers. It's so hard to be like, you should go into STEM, but 90% of the teachers will be male. So good luck, and good luck doing a science class with a non-female science teacher. I mean, that was my experience. It's not everyone's, but things are definitely changing because I went to school so many years ago. But I'm looking forward to the next acronym, whatever that's going to be. STEAM is great, but maybe it's going to be something, like right now I love embracing Jedi and Dr. Cyan's Jedi space. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of, maybe it'll be like start with a W, like the welding or the, I mean, or
No,
aqua, right? Who knows?
who knows? And I think that point of just remembering how, you don't need to come from a normal STEM background. And Christina in this court, she came from she wanted to be a musician. And I
Yes.
think just hearing how she just kind of pivoted, or not even pivoted, but combined her energy, combined her interests into like she's doing so much work right now, and she uses these skills that she needed to use when she was a musician. And I think just seeing her journey is just inspiring to so many young girls, as well as what you're doing with communications, because a lot of times you look into an especially I feel like aerospace, because you see rockets blasting all the time and you're like, I don't think I could build one of those ever. But also just remembering there's so much to that rocket, not just the constructing part of it, but talking to
Sure.
the regular public about what is aerospace, why do we need to invest in it, why is it important to our earth. And I think that communication piece is just so so critical. And I'm really glad that you took that up, and you took the courage and the risk to kind of follow that passion without dropping down in the middle.
Thank
And
you.
I'm
And
sure
Christina's
in
got
this,
a great voice too. Oh, I could listen to her all day.
yeah, and I'm sure through this journey you've had obstacles through different means. And if you did have an obstacle, could you share one or two of them and how you overcame those obstacles?
Sure. A lot of people always ask me, what was it like being a female at NASA? And I love that question because it's not a question. It was never an issue for me. It was
I
my
love that.
age. I was so young when I
Mhm.
got to be able to work. I felt young. I mean, I was in my early 20s. I had just graduated with my graduate degree, and I started in tech industry, and I was a tech writer. And the minute I got the NASA job, which I had worked so hard for, it was about, there's a wisdom that comes with experience, right? And I didn't have that. I did have an accomplished, degree and degrees, but there was a wisdom, like any industry, that I just had to earn. And certainly now, don't get me wrong, 20-year-olds put us on the moon. back in the 50s, right? So there's something to be said for young, innovative engineers. However, there was so many moments at NASA where wisdom came into play, making good decisions, making, following what was taught to me by NASA, not by my academics, but by my new institution and my new agency. So that all came with time. And so it was my biggest obstacle was I was so fresh. I was fresh, I was ready, I was excited, and that's great. That's good for any job. But the wisdom was and the youth, my youth was actually an obstacle. If I could go back to NASA now, wow, the things I have learned in my life, and as a parent and as a spouse and as a, former teacher, there's so much I can apply. And so I really appreciate some of the mentors I had when I was there, because they were like, Beth, let's just focus on the work and let's, stay focused. And that served me well.
I think a lot of times when people think of inclusion and they think of diversity, a lot of it obviously comes to, the ethnicity, the gender, the socioeconomic status. But I think age is sometimes often overlooked. Whenever I attended my first two conferences, Humans to Mars and ISDC this year, and there were a lot of young students, but more so it was almost like you were saying, kind of standing out in rooms, which can be a good thing if you're an extrovert, but also it can be scary if you're more of an introverted individual, or if you're in a room full of adults and you want to add your opinion. For some students, it could be intimidating, or you
Yeah.
might feel like you're being judged. And a lot of times, the age factor, even getting the opportunity as a student to attend these conferences, I'm luckily near DC, so it was very fortunate for me to go. But even to attend other conferences, it's very difficult, even though you want to learn from these experienced professionals. It's very, very difficult. And I think just taking into that age factor too, and knowing how young students who are so passionate about a certain field can actually add so much value is important for, I think, a lot of individuals or, organizers to recognize and,
Yes.
start encouraging young students to get involved at a young age, because I think so much can be done if we get off our phones a little bit and put that energy to other use, given the opportunity to do so.
Yes, I love seeing the students at the different expos and summits, and that really helps bring the energy. And let's be honest, the great questions. It's wonderful to get those questions and get us thinking and get us out of our comfort zone. We're used to the
Of course.
ways we approach problems, solutions, and it's so great when you get that fresh question. It's good.
Definitely. And now that we're able to learn a little bit about your journey, your work, and the incredible things you're doing in the aerospace industry as an analog astronaut and communicator, my last and final question for you is, from your experiences, what makes you nervous and what makes you excited for the future of the aerospace sector?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to just jump into this. It's not easy, but I did see this question and I thought whenever it flashes in your mind, it's usually the best thing. And it did. It came right up as soon as I read some of the questions and I thought, okay, let's do it. Let's talk about it. So when I was at NASA, unfortunately, I was there during the time that we lost Columbia. And I was very much, in the newsroom that day. And I was working and I saw everything at the very same time everyone saw. So it was very much real time happening for me. And it was one of those instances where, again, the wisdom of working at NASA for as long as I had and knowing that there was even a NASA way to handle a crisis was incredibly applicable. It was just, I literally opened the training book we had since day one and went to work the minute that we had lost the shuttle. So one of the hardest things was obviously going through that. And one of the things I get most worried about is that that will happen again. And that's the part of the space risk that we all take, that astronauts certainly take. So there's a beautiful thing that's happening now more than ever. And we're combining robotics with very tested, very explored, very researched vehicles, stations. And I feel like even though there's always going to be that risk, I feel like risk is being mitigated more and more. And I love that we're able to test more on Earth. I love that we're able to test more on low Earth orbit. And I love that we're able to really have these 20 plus years of an international working space station to give us so many case studies, so that when we are stuck in space between here and the moon's orbit or further out going to Mars, we have some tried and true solutions and cases we can pull from and apply. And that helps me feel better about the future, because let's be honest, it's kind of like saying, the first cars that went on the road, the first people to explore and get in ships and go across the
Yeah.
oceans. There was always a risk and there was always something that they had to overcome.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. Here we are on the cusp of space exploration, where more and more people are getting in cars and ships and now spaceships. And so that with more people and more ships, there's going to be more risk. And while I recognize that, and I think we all do, I feel like the last 50 to 60 years of human space exploration has given us enough of that data point where we can build smartly, safely. I mean, I can't even believe we're returning rockets back to Earth
Yeah.
and humans
Incredible.
so safely. I mean, so safely that it's almost like riding a train or a bus or a boat. It's
Yeah.
almost there. So I just want to let's be honest, I'm bringing in my parental perspective as well, and I always will, because I held my breath watching my colleague and my friend Dr. Cyan go to space. I literally held my breath, and then when she landed, all the emotions but the release of safety came through me, and I was like, okay, now I can truly celebrate and truly relax and truly feel like, because I know the risks I had known. I'm obviously not as familiar with the Dragon capsule as I was with the shuttle, being given my work and my history at NASA, but it didn't matter. I was like, that's my friend. That's my girl. Let's get her back when she's safe.
Yeah.
And the way she stepped out of that capsule and danced her way across the
Yeah.
platform was so perfect. It was like, of
Yeah.
course, Cyan would do that. So that's what I want for all space goers. And so that's the risk that I really want to see continue to be mitigated. And that means the analogs and the research and the studies and the robotics. And so I think we're on the right path.
Yeah, I 100% think so too. And I think the way, the risk factor can be kind of a double-edged sword, and especially the answer you said, because it can be a factor that may slow things down, hopefully not. But of course, there's that constant fear of we're rapidly moving, something could happen, an accident could occur. But I think also trying to mitigate that risk and also trying to learn from those mistakes that we may make. Hopefully we don't make any mistakes that cause harm to someone, but being able to take those as learning lessons to improve what we're doing and to make sure we're not putting humans lives at risk and we can still keep up the momentum we're having, I think is so important. And I'm so excited to see what will happen in the next 15, 20 years, because even just from early 2000s to now 2022, it's incredible. I think just from reading, different books and reading about the articles and just from looking past, it's incredible what we've done for making aerospace such a government regulated space to something a lot more accessible to a lot more companies and more private
It
companies like
is
SpaceX.
happening fast. You're
I'm
so
so
right.
excited. I'm so
It's such a
excited for
good
the
time to
future.
be alive.
Definitely. I'm so excited for the future. And I want to thank you so much, Miss Mund, for taking your time to just kind of dive deeper into your journey and your experiences as an analog astronaut. I know so many students will find this so beneficial and inspiring. I know that your story continuously inspires me. And I'm really so excited to continue staying connected and hopefully seeing you at a future conference, which you're going to be at the
Yes.
Stardust one. So I'm excited.
Yes, we are. I'm really looking forward to that. And thank you, Getika. Please have everyone just reach out if they'd like to at bethmund.com and share their stories. And if they so choose, want to continue listening to the Casual Space Podcast, that would be such a joy. And I know they're out there. So just keep sending them to me and I'll keep sharing them and including yours. We'll be doing it again, right?
Definitely. I'll reach back out to you in a few months. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.